Hi, everyone. It's Alexis Hasselberger here, time management and productivity coach. And today I want to talk about something that you can probably commiserate with, and that is meetings and how they're not always the best use of our time, right? But there are some things that we can do to make our meetings better, especially if we're the ones in charge of putting them together and organizing them. So I want to share with you a few tips that you can use to make sure that your meetings are better, that they're more productive, that you don't leave them feeling like it was a waste of your time and other people don't either, right? Because we're spending so much of our time in meetings these days that it's really worth doing a little bit of planning, a little bit of prep to make sure that they're the best use of everyone's time. Okay, so what can we do to make sure that our meetings are great instead of this soul sucking thing where everybody hears the word meeting and thinks, oh no, not again? So here's what we can do. One, make sure your meetings have an owner. Somebody should be responsible for, making sure that there's an agenda, making sure that we stay on track, sending out the invitations, making sure that we know who's there and who should be there, right? Then we want to know who to include. So if you are the owner of the meeting, you want to make sure that you're including only the people who are actually necessary, right? We don't want to just include everybody. And nobody feels good about being in a meeting where they leave thinking, why was I even there? That was a wasted hour. So include only the people that are necessary, but make sure that you're including all the key stakeholders, because you don't want to have another meeting because you failed to include somebody who was a key decision maker, right? So just be mindful about who you're including. If there are other people who still need to stay in the loop, but they, aren't the subject matter expert, they aren't the decision maker, they don't really need to be in the meeting itself, well, you can send out a recap to them. You can make sure they're in the loop. You can solicit their feedback outside the meeting. There's a lot of ways to involve people that don't involve taking up their actual time in the moment in a meeting. Now, when we're thinking about the meeting and who to include, we also want to think, what is the goal or what is the purpose of this meeting? If you don't know what the goal or the purpose is, should you even be having this meeting at all? Or, on the other side of it, I have some clients who say, if I don't know what the meeting is about, if I don't receive an agenda in advance, I'm not even going to the meeting. Now, you might not have that same ability to do that, right? We don't all get to make these decisions in a vacuum. But really think about it. What's the goal? What's the purpose of the meeting? If we don't know that, should we be having a meeting at all? Or should we be doing a little bit more work to see, why it is we need to get people in a room? Now, if you do know the goal and the purpose of a meeting, do you know whether this meeting should be a discussion meeting or a decision meeting? This is a really key difference. If you have been in a meeting and you've left feeling really frustrated, feeling like, ugh, we spent all this time talking, there's no decisions, we're not even any farther along in this project here. Or maybe you've been on the other side, you left a meeting thinking, oh my gosh, decisions were made so fast, we haven't even vetted all the options, etc. Then you have been sort of at this crux of a misunderstanding between a discussion meeting and a decision meeting. When we don't know this in advance, then people get frustrated. So just outline it. What is this meeting about? Why are we here? Are we just hashing things out, or are we going to make a decision by the end of the meeting? Now, we also want to have an agenda, right? So we know the purpose, we know whether it's discussion, decision. Now we actually need to have an agenda. And this can take just a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to be a fancy thing, just a few bullet points. But you actually want to know what you're going to address and if you have enough time to address these things. So send out an agenda, put it in the meeting invite. Even if it's just a few bullets, it'll keep everyone on target. Now, you also want to make sure that people are prepared. So, as you're sending out the agenda, do you need people to read something in advance? Do you want people to brainstorm and bring those ideas with them? Is there anything they need to know to come into this meeting prepared to discuss or prepared to make a decision? If they don't know what's expected of them, then they're going to show up. You're going to end up spending the first half of the meeting, everyone's kind of reading or rustling through papers trying to get prepared. Make sure everyone's prepared in advance, that they know what they need to do. Now, when you're in the actual meeting, you want to set expectations again. You want to frame it up from the top. So you want to say, hey, here's why we're here. Here's what we're planning to do today. Here's what our agenda is briefly. Here's kind of the timeline that we have here. So you want to set everybody up to know what they're going to be doing in that meeting. Now, if people have other topics they want to discuss, this can be a problem, right? Because you didn't plan for that in your agenda. So call that out at the top. Is there anything else that people were planning to talk about today that I didn't include in this agenda? Because maybe we'll have time to talk about them, or maybe we'll need a separate meeting. But just call it out so that everyone's expectations are clear and everyone feels heard. And then finally, at the end of the meeting, you want to do a recap. Even if we all feel like we communicated well, we all know what's going on, sometimes there are miscommunications. And so there are two parts of the recap. One is the verbal recap, right? At the end of the meeting, we want to say, okay, great. Here's what we've decided, or here's what we've discussed. Here's what the next actions are. Who's going to be responsible for what? When are they going to do these things by, etc. Make sure everyone's on the same page. But we want to take it a step farther too. Whoever the meeting owner is, or the meeting facilitator, or maybe someone designated during the meeting, you want to send out a written recap email. So again, it doesn't have to be a big thing, just a couple of minutes, but send out, hey, we had this meeting. Here's what we discussed. Or here's what we decided. Jane is going to take this thing on and she's going to do it by Thursday. And, Jill is going to take this other thing and she's going to get back to us by our next status meeting or whatever it is, right? Be really clear because that gives people an opportunity to say, oh, I didn't realize that was on me, or I thought so-and-so was doing that thing, right? So we want to be really clear, and that gives everyone an opportunity to make sure that they fully understood. And it's also kind of a CYA. So those are the steps that you want to take if you want to have a really productive meeting. And if you want people to leave your meetings feeling like that was a good use of my time. I'm glad I was there. Hope that's helpful. Talk to y'all soon.